I've got a lot of grandbabies, like a lot. And when it comes to finding a gift for each of them, it could add up. But this year, while I was making my way through Walmart, I realized I don't have to spend a lot to get the gifts they'll love.
An OPI mini mani set. I'm gonna do so much nail art.
Oh, yeah! A Lego set. Might own a Walla water bottle.
Ooh, and that's just half of them.
Shop great gifts they're sure to love for $25 and under at Walmart.
Big news! The Burger King Whopper lineup just got bigger. Now featuring the $1 Million Whopper Contest top 3. There's something for street corn stands, bourbon barbecue fans, and fried pickle lovers. You gotta try them.
You rule your season today at BK. Have it your way.
Participating U.S. restaurants. Limited time only while supplies last.
Matt, we are here for the final leg of covering the Weird Al show.
Final 4 episodes, the shocking conclusion.
The shocking conclusion, which is hilarious that you say that, because the first episode we watch, episode 10, He Ain't Heavy, He's My Hamster. According to the DVD commentary, this episode was actually shot as the debut episode.
Episode 1.
Which is why it contains nothing but exposition of all the characters and segments, which seems really out of place because it was the 10th episode to air.
Yeah, I don't understand what made them change the sequence of these. It's not like the sequence we're watching these in has any... It doesn't... I don't know why they would have changed it. Again, it's not like there's that much connective tissue between these episodes. It's not like they are telling a continuous story, but you can definitely see here, that they are setting up characters that we have now met many times.
Yes.
It's weird.
Even like the very beginning, Al is playing air hockey with Harvey, which is adorable. It's adorable to watch. But then he's like, hey, this is my Wonder Hamster. Let's sing the Harvey the Wonder Hamster thing. You can feel even without that commentary, I feel like I would have been like, this has to have been what they were planning for episode 1.
Yeah,
it's just like the whole energy is there.
It is, I agree. He does do the Harvey. It's the second time in the whole series that he has done the Harvey the Wonder Hamster song, like in full. And then there's the one other one where he starts and then the miners crash through the wall. Yeah, no, it definitely does make sense that this would have been the first. I'll never mind hearing Al sing the Harvey the Wonder Hamster theme. That's fine. That's fine.
And this episode's pretty great in the sense that you have a ton of like yelling out loud, holy crap, look at that cameo moments in here.
There's a few really good ones in this episode, yes.
Starting with Dweezil Zappa being there.
Zappa, who is not only there, but he is like just cleaning Al's house.
Well, have you ever seen, this is what it reminded me of immediately. Have you ever seen the Pee-wee Christmas special?
Ooh, yes, but it's been forever. I don't remember it very well.
Everything that was happening with Dweezil Zappa and Al reminded me of the Pee-wee Christmas special, where there is a through line in the episode where he has Frankie and Annette there making 100 Christmas cards for him by hand.
Okay.
And like they're constantly asking if they can be a part of the show. Or like at one point it's snowing outside and they want to go out in the snow and Pee-wee's like, not until you finish making the cards. And like the whole bit is that they never get to participate in the Christmas special because they're too busy making all the Christmas cards. It's almost the exact same bit here with Dweezil where he just wants to enjoy a chocolate lasagna from Al. But
Al has been hyping, apparently. We don't see it, but apparently Al has been talking about his chocolate lasagna. And he tells Dweezil that he can only have a piece if he polishes his bowling ball collection. So Dweezil appears having just finished doing that, but then Al's like, well, did you also finish dusting the atomic super collider? And of course, that brings us to the lesson of the day, which is a true friend is someone who helps you believe in yourself and achieve your goals.
Yes, obviously.
And I guess not someone who you make do things for you in exchange for treats.
But Al, while Dweezil is hard at work, Al sits down to watch some TV, and we get some phenomenal TV. This might be my favorite collection of TV bits ever.
Yes.
Because we get Sabrina the Teenage Fish, which is so stupid and funny. This is one of the worst fish costumes I've ever seen a human being have to wear on television.
I was so happy as I was watching it, like right before the title card came up that said Sabrina the Teenage Fish. I realized what they were doing, and then when it revealed, I laughed really hard because I was like, I just got it right. But the funniest thing about it is this girl at school, and these other kids are like kind of bullying her, and it's like a boy walks up to her, is like, "Yo, Sabrina, I'd come to your house after school, but my scuba tank isn't working." And then this fish person just starts sobbing.
And then the title card shows up.
While crying in front of a set of lockers, it just goes, Sabrina the Teenage Fish on this week. It's like, I mean, the fact that that's the promo for the show, that did make me laugh.
And then they jump back because Sabrina does succeed at school by being the best on the swim team, and then everybody loves Sabrina.
I know,
the
it comes
Teenage
back
Fish.
later that she wins the swim competition, and then she's happy again. I almost wondered if they brought it back just because they were like, ooh, that's too dark.
That's too dark.
We can't have Sabrina the Teenage Fish end that way.
Then we get a
That she's just bullied by everyone.
Then we get a thing that I think this is the only episode in the entire run of the show that we ever get. And I wish we got more of it, which is like weird shit on public access TV. Mm-hmm. And it's this guy teaching you how to play the guitar. And then all of a sudden a third arm just comes out from his side to continue playing. I think every one of these episodes could have benefited from just like what weird thing is on public access TV.
Absolutely.
It's such an easy thing to like dunk on. We get a phenomenal commercial for a shampoo called "May I Take Your Order, Please?"
Because when you're wearing this shampoo, you're going to generate so much good attention that people are going to come up to you in restaurants and say,
"May I take
your order, please?"
And then we get something that we've talked about already on the show, but we get another one of these like very brief music video segments for Living in the Fridge. That is, I think, the biggest bummer about this show not going more than this one season is I would have loved to see what other like 30-second music videos Al would have come up with.
So this is it. I mean, we have more episodes to talk about, but we can say now that that's it. In terms of what Al managed to pull off, these like micro videos within the Weird Al show.
We got
lasagna and we got Living in the Fridge.
And we got the lousy haircut that wasn't from a previous album.
Correct.
That was like an original.
Yes, but that was the closest we've gotten to like Weird Al, the artist, making music video content in the context of this show. And yeah, it's a shame because those are great and really fun, and I'm sure we would have gotten way, way, way more of them as it continued, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah, we would have definitely gotten like an Addicted to Spuds at some point.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton that we would have certainly gotten. But knock, knock, who's that at Al's elevator door? Emo Phillips is here, Matt.
Emo Phillips is here. And it's because, we skipped the other part of the setup of this show. Aside from Dweezil Zappo doing chores for him, Al is mad. He has set up this episode that Harvey is going to do this big death-defying stunt. And Harvey is nervous and doesn't want to do it. And Al is just mad that Harvey is ruining his show by refusing. So Al is just yelling at Harvey. He's like, "Why are you ruining my show? Just do it. You're being a jerk. Yeah." And so Emo Phillips, Dr. Phillips, is an animal psychologist.
He's an animal psychologist. He shows up and he's like, it's going to be like a 10-year program. And Al's like, that's a long time. He goes, well, the first couple years are just trying to teach the hamster how to get onto this miniature couch. It's like a miniature therapy couch. But then he's like, oh, you're making a TV show? And he goes, yeah, in fact, there's a camera right there. And he goes, hi, Mom. And then goes, oh, I'm sorry. Your cameraman looks remarkably like my mother.
Classic Emo Phillips line. Classic.
So hard at that line.
Yep. It was great. Great.
Top tier. Al starts going through his envelopes. He got an envelope of beef stew in Al's mailbag, as well as a letter from Ed McMahon saying that he may have won $10 million. And when he opens it, he did.
He opens the envelope and it's just full of cash. He's like, oh, that's cool.
And then a bit that happens only in this episode, but I could have done with it. Maybe not every episode, but a couple more episodes. The Yoko Ono alarm goes off to let Al know that it's time for a commercial. And it's just
another
screaming noise over and over again.
Another classic Target, a very popular Target to dunk on in the late 90s.
Holy crap. So we come back. Harvey still isn't doing the stunt, and Al's getting angry. and bullying him to try to get him to do the stunt. And then I believe Harvey spits on Al.
Yes.
And it's a lot of water.
You know what? I guess it's supposed to be spit. I did have a legit moment. I was like, did Harvey just piss on him? Like,
That's what I
is
thought
this
too.
supposed to be? Because Al is just like Al's berating Harvey, and all of a sudden it looks at the camera cuts to Harvey and then cuts back to Al, and it's just this like super soaker spray of water hits Al right in the face. And he's like, "Oh, Harvey, come on." And it's like that was it. I was like, I guess that's supposed to be spit. I don't know. I don't want to know what bodily fluid that was that Harvey can utilize like that. That's a talent for the talent show.
But
Harvey.
Al gets pissed off.
Oh, he's mad.
And he gets a phone call from JB Toppersmith.
JB Toppersmith is back. Again, the first bunch of episodes, there was no JB Toppersmith.
He's
and now
all
I feel
over
like he
these.
is everywhere at the end here.
He shows up and he strongly suggests that maybe we should just replace Harvey with a giant banana because, he likes bananas. So everyone should like bananas. And then he informs Al that the skin is the healthiest part of the banana. It just takes a big ass bite of a still unpeeled banana.
So gross. I do love the
that's
fact
right.
that
You hate banana. I forgot about
I
you
hate
with
bananas.
bananas.
But regardless, I mean, it's just gross. But I love the fact that he has inserted the TV executive that he gets to just make fun of constantly in this. Like the idea is like, don't worry about Harvey. I got a better idea, And I was like, really? A giant banana? And the JB is like, kids love bananas. They're really hot right now. You got to get a banana on the show.
Actually, again, we're going to mention this another time. Talking about like the weird out of order that everything is. We also meet Al's accordion teacher in this episode.
Yes,
who
we do.
shows up again like 2 episodes later as if she was going to be a more regular part of the cast. Like, it's so weird. She comes in and Al makes her watch his home movies, which I guess was the original intention for the bit, and then they shift it to the educational videos while filming. And this is pretty great because it's his summer vacation, and we get my favorite part is the Dr. Demento feeding the lions. He's just big old grin as he throws a hunk of meat into
He just opens the door to the lion cage. He just opens it right up.
Then we there's a couple really funny bits. Something that will always make me laugh. We were talking about this a couple episodes ago, where for you, it's like if people just constantly are changing the inflection and the volume of their voice, it like just always works for you.
Yeah. For Billy West especially,
Yeah. For me, it's like you cut away to the fakest looking dummy in the world, I will laugh so hard. So Al's doing this bit about trying to learn how to ride a horse, and you see like actual Weird Al Yankovic sit down on a horse, and then the horse takes off and he does a little like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And then it just cuts to this fake ass dummy dangling off of the horse, getting its head just like smashed into the ground. And I laughed way too much for that.
No, that was great.
And then we also get this Al inserting himself into like a 50s B movie where he's like, oh, we were having a picnic this summer too until the giant radioactive grasshoppers showed up.
It's all Al's home movies. Again, another funny thing from that time period of like at that moment in time in comedy or whatever, it was like the most boring thing in the world for any human being would be to watch someone else's home movies.
Yeah.
That was like the worst. That was a fate worse than death, was having to watch someone else's home movies. It's not exactly the same, but it is sort of amusing to me now that like, what are we really doing in this day and age scrolling through Instagram and TikTok other than actually looking at other people's home movies?
Yeah, they're just
That's
micro
basically what
versions
we
of home
do now.
movies.
And it is now everyone's favorite thing to do. Like, what do we love more than watching what other people did on their trips? I guess the editing quality is better, but
a little bit.
But yeah, it's just that's just one of those weird things. I don't know how we got here.
Yeah. The Hooded Avenger comes to try to fix the situation with Al and Harvey's little beef, and he relates a story that he had to deal with his former best friend, Mr. Molasses, the slowest superhero of all time. And how
Mr. Molasses, as played by Rick Overton, a comic and a comedy writer. He's really good. He's been in a lot of like smaller performances. He had a recurring role on Seinfeld. He was the Drake. Hate the Drake. Love the Drake. You remember him?
Yeah,
that's
the
Rick
Drake.
Overton. Yeah,
I didn't even piece it together.
Oh yeah, and in this he's Mr. Molasses.
That's so funny. The river dancing banana shows up, which
Yes,
listen,
of course.
I know we're supposed to think JP's an idiot, but I mean, I was enjoying this river dancing banana when it showed up.
I mean, it was a good way to kill time while Harvey built up his confidence.
Yeah, and then
I agree.
Al decides he needs to talk to Harvey, and him like pressing his mouth into this tiny little door to talk to him made me laugh so hard.
It was a great shot. It was a really great shot.
Incredible
Harvey
shot.
is hiding in his house because he's so nervous, and Al goes to say hi, and of course, Harvey's house is hamster-sized, so Al is like talking through the little doorway, and you can just see his mouth or his eyes, like depending on the camera. It's really great. It's really good.
It's very, very funny. And I wrote this down. I'm not one who ever wanted pets. Weirdly, this episode almost made me want to own a hamster. Like, Harvey's just like killing it in this episode. Just
Great
seems
acting from
great.
Harvey.
He really
Harvey
is.
seems like a good companion.
Yeah. He does his free fall. It's a big deal. It's a success. And then we get, it's almost like they still needed to fill time because it feels like it's supposed to go to commercial break. And then we get a fake commercial immediately before the real commercial break for Silly Choice Dinners.
This was my favorite.
Well, and I forgot to write this down, but the main guy in this is from Mr. Show, right?
John
Like
Ennis. John Ennis from Mr. Show is in this episode playing the dad in this commercial about TV dinners. But this really made me laugh. And you know what's funny? This actually feels like it's a more G-rated version, but I could have seen Mr. Show doing something like this.
Yeah.
It is very, very much on their brand, which is just...
it's absurd. It's so absurd.
the parents are talking about what they're going to have for dinner. And mom is like, I'm making roast beef. So what should we have with it? Potatoes or green beans? And then the little kid, again, to bring it back to bananas, the little kid goes like, how about bananas? And the mom's like, you can't have bananas with roast beef. And all of a sudden it's like, well, now you can with Silly Choice Dinners. And it's just an array of like mismatched foods for people to have. And it was like, I wrote down a couple of them, grilled salmon and pancakes, spaghetti and rubber bands.
Spaghetti and rubber bands is the best one. But because the thing is, it's not just that they're naming these absurd things. It's shot so perfectly like these types of commercials from that era because they'll say like, salmon with pancakes, and it'll cut to the day. He's like, salmon with pancakes? You can't
Yeah,
do
John
that.
Ennis is like, what? And like
But when-
every single time they say a thing, both parents do a spit take.
But when they bring up the rubber bands, he's like, you can't eat rubber bands.
And then it cuts in the middle of the ad. It just cuts to this small child talking to the camera,
Who's
who's
the
like,
CEO
he's
of the
the
company.
president of the company. Who goes like, my goal in creating Silly Choice was to make dinners I wanted to eat. I love them, and I think you will too. Boy, honestly, maybe my biggest laugh of the series thus far. I
It's
really
so
enjoyed this
good.
so much. It's so great.
This might be actually one of my favorite episodes. What a great first
Excellent,
episode.
excellent. I know this should have been the first episode.
It's
and
weird
we
that
also
it
get
wasn't.
Dweezil Zappa because Dweezil comes and goes a couple more times, and every time Al gives him another task, and Dweezil is just getting more and more furious.
But he finally completes his task. But unfortunately, Harvey accidentally ate the last piece of the chocolate lasagna.
And
So-
Dweezil just storms off.
He
I mean, I
leaves.
don't know. That doesn't jive with the lesson of the day.
No, not at all.
Dweezil got ripped off in this episode. He got nothing. He did all of Al's chores and didn't even get a piece of chocolate lasagna.
And we get a couple Al moments at the sign off, right? Because he reminds us to eat our vegetables, to brush and floss our teeth 27 times a day.
27 times a day.
And then to avoid being hit by unexpected speeding trains. And then a locomotive just rips through and kills Al. And then we get the fat music video, which makes me question, if you remember last week, the only reason that we thought of that they wouldn't have ended the episode with the Flintstones with Bedrock Anthem was that CBS didn't want to pay for like the parody songs. But there's no way that any of the money from Red Hot Chili Peppers would be as expensive as Michael Jackson payments.
Maybe they had a limited budget and they used some, and then because this was the first episode they made, maybe at a certain point they were like, well, that is it. We have nothing left in the budget. So from now on,
Because I think
originals only.
I think almost every episode that we talk about this week ends with a parody video.
I think
know
most of them did. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
what is happening? I was getting so confused. Anyway, moving on to episode 11,
Moving on.
the competition. Al's getting his fortune told by Madame Judy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really remember. Oh, she's warning him that, he might have to be humble, that there might be some things coming up soon. And then Al goes right to his mail segment. and someone has written him a joke. What's the difference between a machine gun and Kenny G? A machine gun only repeats itself 30 times.
Another great subject to dunk on in the late 90s was Kenny G.
Boy, was it.
I was hitting them all.
I also wrote tap dancing pineapple, and I don't remember the tap dancing pineapple.
I don't either. I mean, that sounds like maybe that was just someone in the back. So this episode is centered around Al being nominated for this award for the best TV show host of the year.
Yeah, this was what I watched immediately before bed, so maybe I fell asleep briefly and dreamt of a tap dancing pineapple, because I do not know what that means. But yes, he finds out he's nominated for Best TV Show Host of the Year, and that's when the guy boarded up in the wall shows up yet again, and he requests, hey, could you put on the Fred Huggins show? Mm-hmm. And he puts it on, and Fred Huggins is sending a message that, maybe we need to hear even now in 2024, which is, it doesn't really matter if you're blue, red, green, or yellow. We can all still be friends.
Yes.
And then further pushing that this is definitely a Mr. Rogers parody. He says, you know what? I think it's about that time I start taking these heavy clothes off, and I'll start with my shoes. And the puppets are begging him not to do it. And he takes off his shoes. And then we get a puppet vomiting. Like, just puking all over the place.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Al changes the channel. We get the Al workout character who's basically just running around screaming at people that they got to shake it out before they start the exercise. And then he finds out that the other TV show hosted by Uncle Ralphie was also nominated, and it causes a rift. And I wrote down, it causes a rift between the two of them, and then Val Brentwood, Gal Spy, shows up, and we finally get a full name for this character that's been in almost every episode. Because I know her name was Val, and I could tell that she was some type of spy or detective, but I did not know what her character's full name was until episode 11.
Agreed.
Mildly prestigious actress playing this show. She's the mom on The Proud Family, which is a very popular Disney cartoon. She was in Tales from the Hood, which is like one of my all-time favorite horror movies. Her IMDb credits were actually like wildly impressive, just like constantly in the right place for movie roles. So Al is going to send her to find out what Uncle Ralphie has up his sleeve, because Al calls into the show and kind of causes this battle of who's going to win this award. And Uncle Ralphie sends the first shot by sending a marching band into Al's house holding a sign that says Harvey is mediocre. The meanest thing you could do.
That's really hateful.
Ugh. This was
and of
also
course, Uncle Ralphie also has a competing was it a guinea pig that he has?
Well, that's later. That's later when he does.
Yeah.
No, because his assistant is a clown named Mippish, who only says Mip over and over again.
That clown assistant he has is frightening.
It's terrifying.
Like a scary clown who just goes like, meh, 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 meh. Like that's the only, it's like something out of a David Lynch film. It really was like, ugh.
Yeah, it's wild. Uncle Ralphie has a big musical guest that he's excited to have on his show, the band Radish, but the band doesn't show up, and that's when Al realizes that Val has kidnapped them to force them to play Al's show. And first of all, I'm going to say band's pretty good. Do you know anything about Radish?
Ben Queller.
Ben Queller's like first band.
Ben Queller's first band. So I believe actually Radish recorded Ben Queller's first like solo sort of single hit was a song called Wasted and Ready. And I think Radish recorded that first and then got re-recorded after he went solo.
So the story that I understood with Radish was that they were this indie band, had 2 independent releases, were like media darlings. People were like, this band is the next, like people were really looking at them as like, this might be the next Nirvana. This might be the next thing. And then they got signed to Mercury Records, and Mercury Records just like never put their album out essentially. And they just quietly broke up and went off and did their own thing. So I think that's probably why David Queller's hit was later a solo song, was it was probably something that he recorded when he was on Mercury that just never got a proper release. It seems like a really like bummer story of the record labels just kind of fucking a very potentially massive band.
Maybe. It was also just an odd, like, at that time, Ben Queller must have been, he was a teenager.
Yeah.
He was a
I mean,
kid,
this was like
a
97,
kid.
98. Like they just, yeah. Well, and also the music shift. I'm sure part of it was they signed this band in 1997, and who could have predicted that a year or so later, bands that sounded like Radish were not going to be what people wanted to listen to. Like Korn and Limp Bizkit and all of those bands were just around the corner.
Yeah.
But it still seems like what a missed opportunity for a band that probably could be looked at as like one of these great 90s grunge bands that just never happened.
Well, and that's why I guess that Ben Queller had his moments, like he sort of, his album Sha Sha came out in 2002, which had his most like biggest hits on it, I think. And that was kind of more in line with the sort of like indie rock rise with like the Strokes and the White Stripes and all that. And that made more sense for him. Like he had to wait a few years. I think they were a little bit early.
And
to this day,
I mean, I always associate him with the Bends, right? He was he part of the Bends? The Ben
he was,
Folds,
yeah,
Ben
with Ben
Queller,
Folds and Ben Lee.
Harper? Or Ben,
no,
Lee.
Ben Lee. Yeah. No, he was with that group as well. Ben Queller's fantastic, and honestly is actually one of those, as it was back in the 90s when he was a kid, to this day, I think he is like very, very beloved and respected in the music business and among artists and stuff. He is like one of those dudes who has never had success that is enough for his talents. Like he's a really brilliant songwriter, and I would check out his records if you're not familiar with Ben Queller. It's not nearly as rock and roll as the Radish performance in this episode, but it's great. He is great.
Al goes back to watching Uncle Ralphie, who's now being Weird Ralphie with his guinea pig, leading to possibly my favorite line in the entire series when Al yells out, "Absolutely heartless. Who would do a parody of another human being?"
Yes, exactly.
But he decides, the Hooded Avenger comes over and says, "Al, the secret to success is just being yourself," which gives Al the idea of using his instant plastic surgery machine to turn into something more appealing. And he turns into Drew Carey very briefly.
More appealing. It worked.
And then he turns back into Weird Al. And the other line that made me laugh so hard was he walks over to his table and there's a big package there. And he goes, "Where'd this package come from?" And the Hooded Avenger very nonchalantly is like, "Oh, yeah, a weird tiny clown came in and quietly placed that very gently on your table." And Al opens it, and it's a giant pair of lips until he hears it ticking, and then he realizes, strap in for this pun, it's a lip balm.
Oh, it's a lip balm. Oh boy, these guys are not playing fair. Which again, we didn't say. The lesson of the day: whenever you're in any type of competition, it is important to play fair.
Play fair. So Al goes to make some food to cheer himself up, and he's telling us the instructions. And I didn't write all the instructions. I just wrote the very first one where he says, very softly goes, "Take a raw potato," and then screams, "Don't wash it."
Don't wash it. Here, I have the rest for you really quick.
I knew you would.
Cut it in half with a blunt knife, and then sprinkle liberally with gummy worms. And finally, top it with your favorite brand of India ink.
And then Al takes a bite and yells out, "Someone switched my favorite brand of ink with my least favorite brand of ink."
Yes.
And that's when he
was
realizes
enough to make... Yeah, what should have been delicious is now disgusting. Because it's the wrong type of ink.
And Al's so angry that he almost forgets to watch the award show. The guy in the wall has to remind him. He runs over there, and it's our R.I.P. beloved Fred Willard as the award show host. So funny. He's
Fred
so
Willard
funny.
I think he is one of the funniest people who has ever lived.
I mean,
Fred Willard is a genius.
Just watching him in any of the mockumentaries that he appears in,
Christopher Guest stuff,
those Christopher Guest stuff, like him as the announcer during Best in Show, or my personal favorite as the former stand-up comic, now the manager of a very serious folk band who's constantly trying to do hokey bits with him, is so, like, the amount of times that I'll still just be like, "Hey, what happened?"
Hey, what happened? I say that all the time. Fred Willard, he died just a couple years ago. But an absolute genius. I was so happy to see him on this show. Like, it just makes me happy to know that he and Al were friendly enough that this happened. Like, it's just what a delight. Like, oh my God.
And he's so funny because he's like, everyone's waiting for this award, and he's like, and the winner is. And in that perfect way that only Fred Willard can, he goes on a side tangent about whack-a-mole, but it's called whack-a-squirrel. He's like, and I just think we can't be encouraging kids to go and hit our furry rodent friends. Anyway, back to the...
He's like about to open the envelope to announce the winner, and then he shuts it again. He's like, I'm sorry, but I have to say something. And he just gets so like that. This is where he's so good because he gets so serious and he's just like, I personally don't find anything cute, charming, or fun about a game that openly encourages abuse and violence towards furry rodent friends. And he just gets so serious and like, oh, it's great.
But that's, I mean, again, to go to back and show like the lines that he says with absolute sincerity, like when they're watching the dog show and he just says something like, and to think in other countries, these animals are killed, skinned, and eaten.
Yeah.
He's just it's so amazing.
So good.
But then it's Fred Huggins.
Yes, he actually says it's like, and the winner is the guy who played fair and square, Fred Huggins. And of course, Al and Uncle Ralphie are just horrified. They can't believe. Oh, and the other thing that I love is Fred Huggins' puppets who hate him.
Yeah,
are also shocked. They cannot believe that Fred won. They're like, what?
And then Fred gives like a Sally Fields, like, you like me, you really like me type speech until he falls off the stage. And a joke that we missed, but comes back around again, is that Al threatens to force someone to watch the complete works of Pauly Shore.
Oh, yes. That's Radish, who are tied up. And he says, Radish, like, you're either going to play a song for me, I'm going to make you watch this.
And then it jumps to Uncle Ralphie, and he's now torturing his clown assistant and saying, so what's it going to be? In the Army now or jury duty? Which I just need to say, in the Army now is the obvious pick. Because
I agree. Obvious pick. The other thing in Fred Huggins' acceptance, I just love, again, I'm a sucker for his puppets hating him so much. And Fred just so sincerely, he's like, the only thing that makes winning even better is that my two best friends in the world are here to share it with me. And it cuts to Papa Booley, who just goes, guess again, freak. That poor guy.
With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give the fan favorite everywhere belt bag, the real gift is... And when the ultra-soothing Rest Feel slides are the gift, you're really giving them... This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give little luxuries that go beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
This episode is brought to you by Opill, the first over-the-counter daily birth control pill available in the U.S. Opill is FDA approved, full prescription strength, and estrogen-free. Plus, there's no prescription needed. Finally, the days of needing a prescription for birth control are over. Opill is available online and at most major retailers. Take control of your health and reproductive journey with Opill. Birth control in your control. Use code BIRTHCONTROL for 25% off your first month of Opill at Opill.com.
Are you a fan of young adult novels?
Have you ever wondered the stories behind the people who wrote your favorite young adult novels?
Then join author Eric J. Brown
and Alyssa Lube of Netflix's The Circle
every other Tuesday on YAOK.
Available on all podcasting apps.
Woo!
Episode 12. I love the concept of this episode, which is called the obligatory holiday episode.
Yes.
Where they attempt to just include every holiday.
Yes. You just show up choosing which holiday you want to celebrate. Everyone has shown up celebrating a holiday.
I've got some mixed feelings on this episode, and I'm excited for us to talk about it. Because I also think that the lesson is kind of misplaced in this episode. But the whole thing is set up that Al is going to host a holiday party. They couldn't decide what holiday, so everyone's going to come as whatever holiday they choose. Yes. And the big meal is going to be a mood pie, which is a pie that feeds off the mood of the room. And
it's like a living alien creature.
Yeah, it's like an alien creature mixed with a mood ring is basically what we're seeing. The Hooded Adventure shows up as Santa Claus. Val is St. Patrick's Day, and she keeps pinching people that don't have green, which obviously Santa Claus has no green on. So she is just harassing the Hooded Avenger.
She is making the Hooded Avenger so mad. He walks up to Al at one point. He's like, I'm about to lose it.
And Al is like, there's a bit where he just mentions every holiday possible. And I didn't write it all down, but this is reminding me of an episode of one of my all-time favorite shows, Daria. Daria never had a holiday episode. Do you know about this?
No.
So Daria never had a holiday episode. They never did a Halloween episode. They never did a Christmas episode, whatever. And the story that I understand it is that MTV was like, you need to do like a holiday, like all of our other shows have done holiday episodes. You got to do a holiday episode. So they produced an episode called Depth Takes a Holiday. And like the thing about Daria that I loved was that it's a cartoon, but it's pretty much a fairly realistic high school show. Like it doesn't do a lot of the things that cartoons do, which is like goes really out into like fantasy. Like they try to keep the show grounded. This episode is about the Cupid and a leprechaun show up and ask Daria for help because they come from the land of holidays, and the three most popular holidays, Christmas, Halloween, and Guy Fawkes Day, have escaped the land of holidays to form an industrial grunge rock band with Jane's brother. And they need to convince them to come back to the holiday land. Otherwise, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln will just keep being douchebag jocks and kicking around all the other holidays for not being human presidents. And it's absolutely insane. But at the very end of the episode, Daria just looks at the camera and just goes, "Merry Christmas, Happy Halloween, St. Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Guy Fawkes Day, everyone." And that's kind of like what Al's doing here, where it's just like, let's just get all of them out there. So he's just like, I just want to wish everybody a happy birthday, Merry Christmas, Happy Halloween, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, St. Valentine's Day. And then they all toast to it and drink, and everyone spits out their drink, and he goes, oh, I guess tuna punch is an acquired taste.
Oh, God, yeah.
So gross.
Gross.
There's a whole bit where a guy dresses the Easter Bunny, who is Uncle Ralphie, is fighting with Uncle Sam, who I forget his character's name, but he's the one who tried to cook Harvey a couple episodes ago.
Oh, yeah, something with a V. Yeah. I'm not going to remember now.
I can't remember either. But they're getting into an argument because Uncle Ralphie really wanted it to be the 4th of July, but this guy got to the Uncle Sam, the last Uncle Sam costume first.
Everyone's fighting about their holiday picks.
They're all so upset. Corky's really sad. And instead of talking to her, Al tries to force her to eat a decades-old fruitcake that he's not able to slice. And
yes, exactly. And again, we it's so easy to ignore the lesson of the day, but every once we get to a point where it's like, oh yeah, and then this is the lesson in this episode is supposed to be when friends want to share their feelings, you should be a good listener. Because everyone's upset at this party, and Al is not listening to why they're upset. He is just angry that everyone's ruining his party by being in a bad mood. So he's just yelling at these people who are upset about various reasons. Corky's upset because she has gone dressed as Valentine's Day. I don't really understand.
No one's giving her Valentine's.
No, yes, and she's like, "Oh, I've never gotten a Valentine, and no one's ever done anything for me on Valentine's Day." And then Al does like, "Corky, you look kind of down. Do you know what you need?" And she's like, "To talk about my feelings? No, a snack."
Yeah. Here's my beef with this lesson, though.
Yeah, let's go.
I mean, Al is being a douchebag about the situation.
Yes.
But you know what's the worst place to go and vent about your feelings?
A party?
A party.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's
this being all at a party. Like, I'm slightly on Team Al in the sense of like, hey, when the party's over, let's talk. But like, I'm hosting a thing that a bunch of people are at right now.
Yeah, exactly. There's Al is just so angry. And now I can't remember. I wish I wrote it down better. He says to somebody later on, they're like, oh, I'm just having, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're ruining my party. He's just yelling at everyone like, stop talking like this. You're ruining my party.
He says, if anybody's sad, get out. And then everybody leaves.
Everybody leaves.
But there is a bit that I wrote down that made me laugh. is while the Easter Bunny and Uncle Sam are arguing, he's like, listen, what you need to do is go on an Easter egg hunt down the abandoned mine shaft. And, and it's the hole in the wall from episode 3. So they go looking, and then he's like, so how'd you do on the Easter egg hunt? And they said, there weren't any eggs. The underground rats got them all.
Those underground rats. Great callback. That's a great callback. That's the kind of continuity we're looking for across the series.
That made me so happy. And I had to laugh because he's trying to cheer up people by bringing Harvey out. And he grabs Harvey. Or he goes to get Harvey, and then he sees that Harvey has left a note saying he's not coming to the party because if groundhogs get a day, then hamsters should too, and it's simply not fair.
That's right. I think it's Harvey, actually, that he yells at about that. He's like, oh, Harvey, I didn't realize. Stop ruining my party.
But after everybody leaves, Al decides to sit and watch some movie or watch some TV, and we get the workout guy. Fred Huggins is there, and I have to say, his song about I'm a Little Kitty kind of rips.
Pretty good.
Pretty good
The puppets, again, really hate it. They hate it so much.
He puts on Siskel and Ebert, and they're reviewing a movie called Rabid Puppy.
Rabid Puppy.
Which had me laughing. And then probably my favorite news segment is he's reporting on something, and all of a sudden he goes, oh, and breaking news, this just in, ping pong spelled backwards is gnip gnop.
Yes. And then that's just it. It just cuts away.
Cuts away. Yep. But Hooded Avenger fixes things, says, Al, you weren't being a good listener, but your friends are here. They want to talk to you. They want to hang with you. So they show up, and Al makes them watch more old home videos. And we get, again, another RIP, but the Amazing Jonathan shows up playing his Uncle Jonathan. And I was blown away by this. Like I
was too.
I love the Amazing Jonathan. There were 2 different documentaries at the same time about how bad things were going for poor Jonathan that are highly recommended to watch. But it absolutely makes sense that Al would be a fan. Of course, of Amazing Jonathan, because
for listeners who don't know, Amazing Jonathan was did a comedy kind of magic hybrid show, but also featuring a lot of violence and gore and destruction. He would rip out his own eyes, and it was it's so Al. So Al.
The only other magicians I could even compare him to was early Penn and Teller.
But even then they parted, they moved in very different directions.
Yeah.
Early Penn and Teller was at least I don't know, left field in a similar way.
Yeah. This is almost horror movie level violence.
Exactly.
Throughout.
It's rough. He did the show in Vegas for years and years and years. Unfortunately, struggled. I mean, it was a little too strange for most people, I think. And he never quite really found a home for himself. And unfortunately, he died, I think, 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was fairly recently. But Al's watching his old Halloween memories. And he goes, here's how it always was. He goes, my cousin's got candy, and I just got a big old sack of broccoli. And he flips over his trick-or-treat bag, and just raw broccoli spills out of it.
Yeah, and he does this. He's like, I know it's good for you, but come on.
It's so dumb. And we're watching more and more footage before eventually the film melts, because that was a thing that could happen. It could run too hot.
Yeah, the film just explodes on him. Yeah,
and that wraps it up. They're all friends again, and then Dick Clark shows up to do the countdown to the new year. Also another RIP.
I had noted also another RIP. I had noted, and we didn't talk about it, but in every episode, Dick Clark was one of the 3 producers. The first credit that comes up is the producers of the show: Weird Al, Jay Levy, who does all of Al's stuff, his manager, and Dick Clark.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
So Dick Clark shows up. They do a countdown to the closing credits. Did you watch all of the credits while they sang Auld Lang Syne?
Oh, yes, I did.
Where it's so funny because they're singing. I've talked about this on my Christmas podcast before, but I love the song Auld Lang Syne. I think it's a very pretty song. Bare Naked Ladies do an amazing version of it on their Christmas album, but they're all singing it, and they get to the line before the last line, and they have no one knows what the lyric is, so they just kind of be like,
For old lang syne.
It's so fucking funny.
Yeah, it was great. And yeah, Dick Clark doing a full on, like, he's like, you know, he says, like, I'm here to count down the new year. And Al's like, well, that's great, but the show's almost over. He's like, well, let's just count down to the credits. And it's just a credits countdown, New Year's Eve style, and everyone's celebrating in their various holiday
says happy
outfits.
Credits. Happy closing credits.
Happy closing credits. A great, I mean, again, a really good. A lot of these episodes just end. They feel like they just sort of fall apart at the very end. And this had a really nice conclusion. This was good.
And then we get the final episode, the episode that ties all of the loose ends together.
Yeah,
and
finally all the plot holes are filled in here.
Boy, what a star-studded episode we have here. In episode 13, Al gets robbed.
Yes.
Al and Harvey are returning from Cave Con 3, a convention all about people who live in subterranean caves. And Al's been really super excited. He told all of his new convention friends about his TV show, and they're all going to tune in and watch. And that's when he realizes that his entire set has been stolen. Everything is gone. He has a line where he's looking at a race car, a teeny tiny race car, and he goes, "Oh, Harvey, they even stripped your sunflower."
I know. The tires are removed from the cars. Like, oh, the stereo's gone. Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out how this happened because the Hooded Adventure was supposed to be watching Al's house while he was gone at the convention. And the Hooded Adventure says, I was here the whole time except for when I had to go get my teeth cleaned. And then he apologizes to Al, and Al goes, no, it's okay. Dental hygiene is very important. But he's trying to think of how is he going to entertain people with nothing. And he finds a sheet of paper, and I wrote this down. I don't think that there's any camera trickery to him doing this origami.
I think Al did that.
Al just does this origami to create a little barking poodle origami in a single take. And it's pretty impressive. I mean, they speed it up, but it's very impressive.
It is.
He walks around. He finds a piece of moldy pita bread that he could eat. And despite the fact that the mold's so old, it's created its own civilization, he decides to go for it. He tries to use another piece of moldy pita bread to be a new puppet named Rita the Pita, but absolutely nothing's working. Al's feeling disheartened, like he's got no way to entertain people. And then suddenly, through the mine shaft, comes Macho Man Randy Savage.
Straight through the wall.
Just bursts through the wall.
Crashes through the wall like others have in the past, yeah.
Bursts through the wall and just says, hey, man, if you want to entertain people, we could have a wrestling match. And Al's like, you're on, buddy. And then he puts Harvey into the ring. And it does that bit where you know where the punchline's going because it cuts to just Al. And he's like, no, you're hurting him. Stop. And then it finally cuts to the wide shot. And Macho Man is laying on the ground with Harvey on his back being like, get him off me, man. He's a madman.
But before that, Macho Man does a really great, like a full elbow drop onto Harvey at the start of the bit. He's like, let's go, and just elbow drops his hamster. And then it cuts away and reveals that Harvey is actually winning. But like at that first shot, I laughed really hard. Like,
oh my God. And he's like, I think I busted my rib with that guy.
Like, you know, Macho Man, like overall seems like he was probably a little bit of a mixed bag of a dude, but man, is he entertaining as a wrestler. He was just like truly one of the best who ever did it, man. I mean, he is like so compelling, so fun to watch.
Macho Man leaves after losing to Harvey. Bobby the Inquisitive Boy shows up, and his question is, where do I come from? And Al says, this is like one of the edgiest jokes I think they've ever had. He says, maybe you should ask your dad. And Bobby says, he told me to ask you because you probably have plenty of movies on the subject.
Yeah, and of course, then I was like, well, all my movies got stolen. He's like, well, can you just tell me? And I was like, no.
He goes, can you read me this story? And we get the final Fat Man cartoon. And Matt, I know we've really dunked on Fat Man for most of this. This is easily the best Fat Man cartoon. There are some great jokes.
It was a solid ending. I felt pretty good. I actually at least was able to follow this one.
I could follow this one. So the villain shows up. This made me laugh so hard. But they're like, who are you, villain? He's like, I am the Eggman. And then a walrus pops out and makes like a weird noise. He goes, and he's the walrus. And the cop just goes, coo, ka-choo.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's threatening he's stolen all the world's chickens. And they're laying eggs. And if that town doesn't give him the money he wants, he's going to release all the eggs and turn the entire town into a giant omelet.
Yeah.
And when Fat Man hears this, he's like, "Oh man, I'm down with that." And he's like, "Well, it's just eggs." He's like, "He's gonna make a bad omelet." So Fat Man,
yeah, or like a boring omelet.
Yeah.
He's like, we're gonna stop him from making an enormous, boring omelet.
yeah. So he flies up there, and this is how Fat Man saves the day. Is by adding meats and vegetables and cheeses to the helicopters, and it weighs the helicopters safely to the ground.
Well, and they fall. The air balloons or helicopter things fall into a lake, which the sign in front of the lake says the name of the lake is Lake Convenient. And all of the bad stuff just drops into the lake.
See, that's
and then,
perfect. This is that Rocky and Bullwinkle humor that I think the Fat Man cartoons were supposed to have the whole time.
I agree. And then we get even more like Eggman just keeps dropping bad egg puns, and he's like, "Oh, you might have beaten me this time, but it's not ovum till it's ovum, and I
the
shall
yoke will
return."
be on you. And then Harvey
And finally,
gets annoyed.
Harvey's like, "I can't take it anymore. I can't have any more egg puns."
So he destroys the helicopter with Eggman in it.
Yep.
And then Al kicks Bobby the Inquisitive Boy out because All for One is coming over, which makes me wonder why. But, well, actually, there's a bit that we have to talk about. Put a pin on it. We're going to talk about All for One for a second.
We got to talk about
the
All for One.
The highlight of this episode is not Macho Man Randy Savage. It's when Al opens a letter about a kid being bullied for having an imaginary friend, and he starts talking about his imaginary friend, Gilbert, and we see your former boss, Gilbert Gottfried. And it is so funny because he's just like, "I'm not imaginary. How many times do I have to tell you?" And he's like pulling out his wallet. He's like, "What do you want? My birth certificate, my driver's license." And he's just so angry that no one is acknowledging that he's just Gilbert Gottfried.
And Al is just like, "I wish you guys could hear what he's saying to me right now."
It's so good. And Gilbert Gottfried's the perfect person for this bit.
Perfect. Like, so perfect. And then when All for One arrive, Al's like, "Oh, hey, it's All for One." And Gilbert's like, "Don't bother saying hi to me. I'm imaginary." And he just walks away.
And I have to say, All for One, I did not anticipate that they would, A, be this funny and have decent acting chops, but they're actually really good in this episode. They show up all wearing Hawaiian shirts and like, "Some guy's selling them upstairs."
And I was like, "Oh, that's great." Yeah.
Well, and Al's like, "Guys, I meant to call you and tell you, like, I don't have any recording equipment or anything for you to perform with." And the one member goes, "That's fine, Al. Music comes from right here." And he goes, "Your shirt?" He goes, "Your heart."
Your heart.
And then they perform a very good a cappella performance of a song I don't know, because it's not "I Swear" or "I Could
It's
Love
not
You
I
Like
Swear.
That."
Exactly, yeah.
So it's fine.
No, they did a nice job. You know, I have to, like, with the musical guests on this show,
they're all over the place.
They're all over the place. And there's like a part of me wants to say that, like, kudos to Al for making it a very diverse and eclectic bunch of guests.
Yeah.
But also, it really does kind of feel like this was just like the 5 people who got back to him.
Yeah.
Honestly, because it's so random and it feels like Hanson, the Bare Naked Ladies.
But see, like the Hanson, the
Immature.
Bare Naked Ladies, and even Radish feel like they make more sense to me with this show than when you have the R&B and soul performers, just because it's like there's so much sincerity in their performances that it feels like, what is happening here?
It's
like
generally not known for the comedic side of things at all. But to be fair, I feel like even Hanson, I feel like maybe it makes more sense now with many, many years of perspective on Hanson. At the time this was made, they were so huge.
New. Yeah.
I think that, and even Bare Naked Ladies were an unknown. Bare Naked Ladies and Radish are wild swings, super obscure. Hanson are incredibly huge pop act. And then Immature and All for One are dead serious soul music. So it is like...
But I think All for One, I would say that Immature is probably my least favorite of all the musical performances because it's so out of place and it's so sincere. The guys in All for One have some great lines. Even
they play it well. They play it well in the context of the show. I just mean on the surface, musically, it's like...
Because like even after their performance, he's like, "Well, Al, we'd love to hang, but we're on a heavy-duty cave tour. We've got 6 more to visit this week."
Just today.
just today. And they leave. So Al goes to watch. The Hooded Avenger brings Al a tiny little TV set. And he puts it on. And we get Martha Quinn
Wait. Before we talk about Martha Quinn, we have to talk about when the Hooded Avenger arrives. I think this might have actually been the first time he arrives. We didn't mention he shows up with Al's mail. And did you notice what the mail is?
No.
He shows up. He's like, oh, I held on to your newspapers for you.
Yeah.
And all of the newspapers he brings are issues of Midnight Star.
Oh, God, I missed that.
And,
yes.
and the front one he is holding, the headline is Incredible Frog Boy on the Loose.
Oh, man. Okay, that's great.
Excellent Easter egg that was embedded in there. I love the fact that they got that in. That's great.
No, that's phenomenal. But yes, he puts on the TV. If your favorite commercial of almost all of them was the silly choice, this Martha Quinn PSA
The Martha Quinn one is great.
Is really good because it feels so serious when she's talking, and I'm like, what is she talking about? When she's like, if people ask, you don't have to tell them. You can just say, I don't know, and leave. And then she's like, because sometimes giving no directions is better than giving bad directions.
She is kind of saying it straightly the whole time. It just is so odd. She's like, you think about it for a moment. If you don't know the best way for them to go, just smile and tell them you can't help them. Giving someone directions you're not sure about, even if you're just trying to help, is a bad idea.
Yeah, it's so... But honestly...
It's like a drug PSA. The way it's presented
is
so
drug
serious.
PSA,
yeah.
And it's not incorrect. There have been so many times where I'll be like walking, especially if I'm like in a different city, and someone will pull me over for directions, and I just have to be like, I'm not from here. I'm the worst person for you to ask. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Then we get a Cops parody, and it's the live broadcast of them capturing a thief, a man who recently burglared a local town, and they open up the back of his truck, and then they're just like, what crap? The bigger question is, who would want any of this stuff?
Yeah,
and it's
they're like,
all
breaking
about-
news, someone robbed all this absolute junk. And it just shows like Al's like eyeball chair and like all this
so
just
funny.
nonsense props.
But then they unmask the burglar, and it's a return of Dick Van Patten.
Dick Van Patten just was, man, he must have been just hanging in like on set. He's like, anytime you need me, I'm here.
Yeah,
just so you
just
guys
right
know,
here,
I'm
Al.
happy to
Please.
hop up there whenever you need me.
And then he goes. He disappears. We go to commercial break, and that's the end of it. We get the Money for Nothing video, and that's the end of the Weird Al show. As you said, these episodes kind of just end. Like
they kind of just, and this one especially, kind of just ends.
They
and,
find the burglar.
boy.
End of story.
Yeah, and you just presume like, oh, I guess, well, that will work out fine. And again, we didn't even have to talk about it in this one. The lesson of the day is supposed to be, when faced with a problem, use your creativity and imagination to help you solve it. And it's like, I guess. I mean, this really more, it's like about kids using their imagination when they're bored.
Yeah.
But I guess... I don't know. That's a real stretch of a lesson of the day for Al being robbed.
Boy, is it. But you know what? We did it. We done did it. We watched the Weird Al show.
Final thoughts? I mean, what do we think?
Final thought, like, I'm excited to take the DVDs because I bought this on DVD for this. I'm excited to listen to the commentary tracks. I know our guest Abby a couple episodes ago said, like, you really should dive in to the commentaries. We even got a couple emails from people saying, like, I highly recommend you listen to the commentary tracks. So I will.
I'm down to do that too. Why don't we both do that, and then we can do like another like thoughts thing at some point in a mailbag or some other moment in time.
We'll do it for like the Running with Scissors mailbag. I will tell the listeners what's going to happen next week, because originally I had planned for us to do another mailbag next week. But I think at the time I didn't realize, like, we haven't really covered that much stuff between the first mailbag, the last mailbag, and this one. So we're going to do, there's a ton of music video stuff where Al, like, appeared in and or directed music videos for people in the 80s and 90s. So we're going to mostly focus on that. We're going to focus on, like, some of the music video stuff that we missed out on. And then right as we hit December, we will dive right into the Running with Scissors stuff, and we're going to get into Saga Begins and all those. But real quick, before we wrap up, I should say December 6th, we are doing a live stream again. We're doing a live stream with Geekscape on at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be Dave and Ethan. It'll be UH Jeff. It'll be Kelly. And we will be drafting our perfect Weird Al 5-song private set list. But the catch is that once a song is picked for someone's set list, no one else can have it.
Oh,
so
boy.
I think it's gonna be real cutthroat, and I can say that we will premiere the short documentary that we made trying to test out Jim's graphics card. So everyone who's been wondering, did you guys go and get to play it? Stay tuned. 11 a.m. Eastern Standard, December 6th, as part of the Geekscape live stream.
Fun.
It's going to be for Big Brothers Big Sisters. I believe at this time this is up and running. If you want to donate anytime, you can donate before December 6th. Geekscapegives.com will take you right to the donation page. So go and use that as often as you wish. Share it with your friends.
Yeah.
And we'll see everybody next week.
Real quick, before we wrap, I have one final thing to say about Weird Al Show, because I mentioned this before, and I just wanted to highlight it one more time. I love making recommendations to people who listen to this based on taste and stuff. I had mentioned the set designer and the guy who built this set for Al and did all the visual stuff is a guy named Wayne White, who also worked on Pee-wee's Playhouse and all of the Pee Wee Herman stuff.
Yeah.
He is also an incredible artist, and I didn't note before, there is a documentary about Wayne White that is called Beauty is Embarrassing, about his life as an artist and working with all of these people. I don't know if Al is featured. I don't remember Al being part of the movie. I saw it years ago, but it's fantastic, and he is just an amazing guy, and so much of my favorite things about the Weird Al Show had to do with this wild world that they built in this. The set is incredible.
Yeah.
If you're interested in art and documentaries and all this stuff and how it maybe touches Al, Wayne White, amazing artist, and Beauty is Embarrassing is a documentary I would recommend people check out.
Awesome. And like I said, we'll be back with a bunch of the stuff that we missed over the last year or two, and then we'll dive into Running with Scissors.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.